I had sleepless nights, man, for like 2 weeks, and I was like, I've got to call this person and say, look, I'm sorry, I can only afford half-time. This is not the way you do it.
You make 40 grand in the first year, what do you do?
Work out how to make 80 the next year. Looking back, if I could do it again, all I would have done is do it earlier.
We're the easiest country in the world to set up a company and one of the fastest. It's not hard. School probably took you 5 years, uni 3 if you did that. Like a trade still takes years to do. Business is a whole new vehicle, a whole new venture. Expect it to take time. Now you've quit your 9 to 5. Now recently we did 2 podcasts on how to quit your 9 to 5 and then when to quit your 9 to 5. And then someone actually asked after that, what do you do now that you've quit your 9 to 5? So Mikey, we're going to dig into that. I'll read you actually what they asked. They said, hey man, idea for a pod, case study style is if you and Mikey decide to quit your 9 to 5, run a scenario on a small business startup. What software are you using for bookkeeping? How are you paying GST? Where are you going to get your business license? What insurances do you need? What things from an accountant's point of view are crucial that some don't know when it comes to keeping things clean? You make 40K in the first year. What do you do? You want to hire a person in year 2. How do you calculate that decision? What costs surprised you when you started and watch out fors? I love your stuff, mate. Expat Kiwi from Whangarei, listening from Newfoundland, Canada.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy, eh?
Yeah.
So, look, this is going to cost you $2,000. So we're about to put this behind a paywall. There's a fair bit there, but I think we can kind of cover it. That
is interesting, eh?
Yeah, there's some really good questions.
Really good questions, and I asked none of them when I quit. I just went.
Yeah. I was thinking, I've written here, how did Mikey account for tax? Yeah. Ask him.
I didn't, man. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, eh? Because I think, luckily... the amount of questions we get, like this one is quite clear and nice, but a lot of people, you can tell that a lot of these questions are around fear of making the choice.
Yeah.
I skipped that and luckily had so little knowledge about that stuff that I just did it. And I was like, well, I'll find out.
Yeah,
and I think lucky that I did that, because I reckon if I had asked about what GST is and what do I do with tax and what's provisional and all of this stuff, what license do I need or whatever, I just would have...
Too hard.
Yeah. I would have been too scared. I've been like, oh, that sounds like you need to do a lot.
Yeah.
And it's way easier to figure out once you got money coming in.
Excuse me, it certainly is, mate. Yeah, well, and then you can... I think the thing here with this stuff, of course it's all going to be new, It's a little bit like swimming. You can go to a pool and just jump in the deep end and you're not going to know how to swim.
Mm.
You're going to stand there and you're going to be like, I need to protect myself from drowning.
Yeah.
But then eventually you're going to say to someone, hey, can you please help me swim? And if you're drowning, someone's probably going to jump in and try and save you as well. Unless they can't see you. If they can't see you, that's fatal.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what business is like.
Yeah, it kind of is.
You hide in the deep end, not knowing what you're doing, and eventually the business fails. And it comes out in the wash, and it's like, oh, holy shit, that business is in big trouble, it's done. But there are many people that are treading water, but aren't really then asking someone like, hey, I don't want it to be like this forever. Can you please help me figure out how we could do it better?
Yeah, yeah.
But then we watch the Olympics and watch people, and they are killing it swimming. They are, but they didn't just jump in the pool and sort of never ask for help or get coaching.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, eh? My legit case study, my actual journey of quitting the 9 to 5 is I sort of did it because I didn't like the boss that I had. So I was just like, oh, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had one of those habits, which was saving. So I had some cash to lean on and I didn't need to find a job the next week or anything like that. So it's just like, no, I don't like this, I'm out.
Yeah, nice.
And then I actually went and traveled. Did some fishing and stuff like that, and
for 3 days.
Yeah, back into it. Yeah. I just went on a bit of a hunt, to find out what to do next. But I literally had no idea what I was going to do next.
Yeah,
and I think looking back, if I could do it again, all I would have done is do it earlier.
Get started earlier.
Yeah. And get into the vehicle that I'm in now and get into business and stuff after leaving the 9 to 5 earlier. But in saying that, it probably needed a few of those catalysts and things, like I didn't like the person, I didn't like the job, I needed all those things to pile up to a point where I was just like, deep end's sweet.
Yeah.
Because deep end would have been scary if I didn't have those things pushing you over the edge. and you just wouldn't have jumped, you just would have sat on the pool looking at everyone else in the pool.
Well, just on that, mate, this has just really given me something. I think this might help someone who might be considering having a crack. If you don't like your job, and if you know that you are not destined to be a 9-to-5 person forever, remember and think, where your job is currently going. Remember, you can't get that year back in a year's time if you haven't taken action.
Yeah.
So have a think about what the next year in your job or role looks like, and think about where you're going to be in 12 months' time. You can never get that year back to put and invest into business.
Yep.
So if you quit now or soon, or the longer you leave it, those are years that you can then use to compound. But the longer you leave it, then you can't compound that time.
Yeah, it's gone. You never get it back.
And even when you start in 2 years' time, when you think you're perfectly ready, you're still going to get all the lessons. Like, you're still in the deep end. You're going to have to learn to swim. You're going to have to ask for help.
Yeah, split yourself into two people, and one goes and does it now, and the other one waits to perfect everything and do it in 2.5 years or whatever the time frame is. When you get to that 2.5 years and you've made the decision, the person that started 2 years ago, where do you think they would be at in terms of their... Do you reckon they would have figured out GST by then?
Yeah.
Do you reckon they would have figured out like provisional tax? Do you reckon they would have been able to work out like how to register a company on the company's office if they needed to?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. I'll go through some of these things and we'll just crush through them so that we don't spend heaps of time on them. The first one is, where are you going to get your business license? I've written here myth. Like, that's not a thing. Don't worry about that. That's overthinking. You don't need a business license.
If you're a working human in New Zealand, you have an IRD number and you will pay tax.
Yes, yeah. So that's what that is. So basically, if you start, mowing your neighbour's lawns in the cul-de-sac, and then you're trimming their bushes and doing all sorts of stuff, and you're just earning income, that needs to go into your individual tax return as business income. You don't need to go and apply for a license or something. The ID just want to know, how much did you make, dickhead? Give us a third of that for tax, probably. That's what they care about. They don't care about your license. But then if you set up a company, which is on the company's office, we're the easiest country in the world to set up a company and one of the fastest. So it's not hard, but you can get it wrong, or you can then have to change things. But really, at a very high level, there's an overuse of companies in this country because people think that starting a business means setting up a company. No, you don't need to set up a company, get a license, get a New Zealand business number to mow your neighbour's bloody lawns. Yeah. Okay? You're in business the day that you start doing stuff.
Yeah.
Now, this is not tax advice. This is just of a general nature, etc. as well, because someone always takes things out of context and has to be a hero. But we're trying to speed people up so that they don't get stuck at these things.
Yep.
Now, then, you might go, well, no, you need a company. Well, yes, you probably need a company if you're going to be building a fully established business over time, and you're going to hire people and you're exposed to risk, and companies give you a form of limited liability protection. So basically it means that if someone, you're doing business, the company's doing business, and someone attacks the business or sues it, or you do something wrong, that's a separate entity. When you run over your neighbour's hose and they come out and go, you run over my hose and now we haven't watered our agapanthus and they've all died, there's $1,000 worth of agapanthus that are dead now.
You better have a limited liability company.
Yeah. They'll be like, give me the money. Yeah. So you're probably still going to have to pay them the cash. And that brings me to, what insurances do you need? Again, don't overthink that. You can get insurance for everything these days. So this is how we complicate it. It's like, you need cyber insurance, you need public liability, you need indemnity insurance. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have the money for that. You start mowing the lawns and then figure out the insurance as you start to see the risk popping up. Like, oh shit, I don't want to be, liable for $10,000 worth of agapanthus by running over someone's hydration system. Yeah. Maybe there's insurance around that. Or you do this real weird thing where you go on the internet, on this thing called Google or ChatGPT, and you say, hi, I have insert type of business. Do you have any specific types of insurance I should be thinking about? At what year would you put those in place? What's the cost benefit? And you get a bit of advice. Because if you go and ask an insurance person, they can be like, yeah, you need this one, this one, this one, this one. And look, I don't want to tempt fate, but it's like, we've got cyber insurance and all this shit. And it's tens of thousands of dollars in next advisory. It's gone from not being an expense to now might be 30 grand a year.
Yeah.
30 G's, baby. Yeah. Like, gone. And we ain't used it yet. But it's there because it's there to de-risk for peace of mind. So that's all insurance is doing. So it's not like you've started a business, you need insurance.
I think the thing you said there, which is really important, is like, just go, and then as you see the risk popping up, like, use your eyes and you're like, oh, that could shut me down.
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
insure against that.
Yeah. Or see what other people, what issues they're running into in the same industry and go, oh, how are they protecting themselves from that?
Yeah.
So, but you shouldn't let these things be the things to stop you. Okay, what software you are using for bookkeeping and how are you paying GST? Now, in New Zealand, you can voluntarily register for GST at any time, but you must register for GST if your income, so your sales, not your profit, your sales, so mowing people's lawns or whatever it is you're doing, if your sales are going to be over $60,000 in a 12-month period, or likely to be, basically, you should be registering for GST.
That's top line revenue.
Yeah.
If that's over 60, GST's on.
Yeah. Now, Mikey's in an industry where there isn't any GST. So, again, you want to find an accountant to help with that if you don't need to be registered for GST.
Yep.
But for most people, they're not having to worry about this stuff. But if you're out there sole trading and actually contracting to people and offering services and are contracted to multiple different businesses, high chance you're going to need to be registered for GST. Go back and listen to the podcast with James Fuller from Henry.
Yep.
Now, they have 100,000 customers. 100,000 sole traders use Henry to look after their taxes, GST, claiming expenses, and invoicing. You don't need to figure any of that out anymore. James and his team were like, that's a problem. We'll fix it. 100,000 people trust them to do it and growing. Okay? So no more overthinking. Don't need to worry about that. Or it could be that you don't even have invoices to start with and you just tell your neighbor you owe me $250 and you tally it all up on a spreadsheet and then you tell the IRD, right, I had $10,000 worth of income, had $2,000 worth of fuel expenses, therefore I've got an $8,000 profit, bang, you've got to pay tax on that.
Yeah.
But there'll be no GST on that because you're not registered for GST because your turnover isn't over $60,000 and you haven't voluntarily registered. But let's say that you did scale up and you did $100,000 worth of lawn mowing services, as an example, then you would have to be registered for GST. So then when you go and do a $100 job for someone, once you're registered, you're probably going to want to charge them $115 because $15 of that's going to be GST that you need to put aside for the government. So there actually
government, man.
There's some data recently from Henry where I think a third of their sole traders deliberately keep their income less than $60,000 because they don't want to register for GST.
I saw that. That's wild.
And it's also small think. Now, I'm going to offend some of those people who probably voted in that, but guys, you've got to have bigger goals than that. That barrier was put in place, that limit was put in place by someone, and then you decide how you live your life based on that. I said to one of our clients recently who had the same thinking, I'm like, no, you're going to charge 15% more and charge GST and you're going to continue to grow. This is going to get bigger than a $60,000 business. We're thinking bigger than that. Let's go. Oh, but what if people don't want to pay it? What a shame. They won't pay it. Let me tell you how many people won't want to pay it because they all love you and you add a lot of value, probably like 2% of them.
Yeah.
So what, you're going to stay behind a limit that someone set for you that you don't even know who the fuck that person was, and you're not going to do it because you're scared of the 2 people out of 100 that are going to say, oh, I'm not paying an extra 15%. If they like what you do, they will understand that you're now registered for GST. You've got to charge GST. It is what it is. Let's roll. Our goals are bigger than this.
Yeah. I don't even think that people think that far about it. They just think, yeah, this is valuable. I'll pay for it.
Yeah. Oh, okay, right. Like they understand GST. GST's on everything. It's been here for years. It is what it is. So don't let that stuff scare you. If you are going further down the business route, you might use Xero, where you basically send your invoices yourself. You then bolt the business bank account. So that's one point I would add. You want to, when you're in business, it's very smart to have a business-specific bank account so that you can keep everything separate from your personal income.
That would get messy.
Or just your personal life. And so then you can see income coming in, expenses going out, and it makes it a lot easier for yourself or an accountant to work out your profitability.
Some days, man, I am sitting down looking through my P&L and reconciling some accounts and using Xero and thinking, how on earth did anyone operate without this software before?
Man, I saw people recently as last week talking about how they still keep a paper ledger and all this stuff. Like, they're proud of that.
I just don't know how. It must have had so much time and effort.
Yeah.
And, my old man tells me stories of like, he'd work for, go in at like 7 a.m. to his workshop and then come home at 7 and then sit down until midnight or 2 a.m. doing invoices.
Oh, man.
I was like, how did you guys do that, eh?
Xero have basically done research. I can't remember what the stat is, but if more businesses in New Zealand took on technology, of course they're going to advocate for that, right? Because they can charge more fees, right? But the saving in time therefore, what that time can be used for, the introduction of like an increase in GDP, and productivity and efficiency, which is what our country struggles at. But no, people are like, oh yeah, I keep a manual sheet and I write it all down and it's really easy and all this stuff. And they're really proud of that. And, I keep my income below 60,000 so I don't have to register for GST. Like, oh guys, like this is what holds us back.
Zero for companies, and then like Henry for
sole traders.
Insane tech that you just shouldn't be operating in either of those fields without.
Yeah, and also
the amount of time you get back.
Yeah, zero scaled internationally, Henry, New Zealand, and then into Australia. These are smart Kiwi people solving the same problems that you're going to be thinking about. Like they've done it. They're
not actually problems anymore. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like this stuff is insane. Like the problem might have been a problem 20 years ago. It's not anymore.
Yeah.
One of my goals is to help 100,000 Kiwis improve their financial literacy and in turn help create a better New Zealand. Generate has a very similar goal to educate and empower Kiwis to make smart KiwiSaver decisions so more of us can be better off at retirement. That's why I'm stoked to have them on board as sponsors. Together, we can reach more people and make this goal a reality. If you've never got KiwiSaver advice before, book a no obligation chat with a Generate advisor at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/change. They'll even put you in the draw to win 5k worth of vouchers just for having a chat, whether or not you decide to sign up. T's and C's on that webpage. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
Okay, so next thing is what things from, I'll just go back through to sort of summarize. So if I was starting a business, I would want let's say I'm starting an accounting company, like I'm actually starting a business. I want a company and I want a shareholder and a director. It's going to be me. And then I'm going to want a bank account for that company. That's going to take you 64 weeks to get one from a bank because you've got to know your customer and do you bleach your asshole and all sorts of different stuff as well that they want to know before giving you a bank account. Yeah. And then you have that, and then you want to run all your business transactions through that. And then you might want to then have Xero as well, which then Xero will take the transactions and every day they'll pop up in there and you can tell it, oh, that was income. Oh, that income coming in matches against the invoice. Oh, that was a coffee meeting with a potential client. Oh, that's some stationery that I brought. Oh, that's my first round of insurance because I'm 6 months in and I want to de-risk that issue over there. Yeah. And it's constantly tracking your GST and your profitability, and your profitability is what you pay tax on. Yeah. So then you might want an accountant's help to do that as well. You know, you might think, okay, of course I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that because I've seen people try and do it themselves. Yeah. And one day the IRD are probably going to do an audit into people who self-declare all of their income, and people are going to get a big old fright. Some of the questions I get where they tell me, you know, like, oh, hey, just checking this. And then I'm like, oh my God, well, the question's wrong because there's 8 things before it that don't, you know, make sense anyway. But anyway, and one day, like just to be, for those people who think, okay, of course you're going to say use an accountant or use Xero Henry, think 5 years time, AI might be able to run over the transactions in your bank account from the IRD and check it all anyway, and I don't have a job. So it could be coming. Yeah. Or Xero could do it, and then the IRD check it and they go, look, we're happy that that's 98% accurate. That's good enough for us. We'll accept a 2% buffer. Yeah. Here's your tax bill. Don't need Luke anymore. Why do you need me?
Mate.
Yeah. So, I could be done. But that's fine. I'll figure something out and I'll get universal basic income and just cruise. Then I've quit my 9 to 5. Yeah. Now I've quit my 9 to 5 and sitting there doing nothing. I'll be finding ways to add value to people's lives and I'll still do well. But what things from an accounting point of view are crucial that some don't know when it comes to keeping things clean?
Don't spend more than you earn.
Yeah, probably like the tax in year 1 and 2. So basically how I'd explain this is the IRD don't know that you've got into business, or they're not coming around to knock on your door being like, hey, great, we heard that you bloody started this company.
Can I open this with something? Because when I was getting into business, the amount of times that I heard, you don't pay tax in year 1.
Oh, I think it's interpreted wrong.
I think, because that's kind of right. But the reality is you are going to pay tax.
Yes.
But so I think a lot of people hear that and they think that they get a year tax free.
Yes.
Not that they haven't made the payment on, January the 15th.
Yeah, so a good way to think about this is, let's say you start a lawn mowing business in May.
Yeah.
And then like the IRD don't know and they don't care and they're not coming around to be like, hey, pay up some tax.
Yeah.
Tax in business is very different to PAYE income where it's sucked from you every week. Henry, for instance, if you're doing it as a sole trader, they pay your tax as you go. So they are going, righto, like we will put some aside for you. So you're invoicing out of Henry, you're claiming some expenses, and then they're keeping a portion behind to pay the IRD on your behalf so that you don't get the surprise. Let's say you set up a lawn mowing company in May and you're sending your own invoices, and then you're claiming your expenses, and you even have an accountant, but you do it in May. Then you get to March the following year, and then it's time for you to do a set of accounts for that company. But you've got a whole year to do it. So then your accountant pisses around and they do your set of accounts in like October the following year. So not only is a whole 12-month period gone, but now we're into October. And what they do is they go, hey, we did your accounts from May to March. Your profitability was $60,000. Let's just say your tax is 20 grand. You've got a 20 grand tax bill and you have to pay it in April. It's now October. And you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What do you mean? And they go, oh, by the way, the IRD now know how profitable you are, and they suspect that you'll be just as profitable, if not more profitable. So based on that $20,000, they want you to start paying provisional tax. So you need to pay tax in August, but we've missed August because it's now October. So then your next payment would be January and then May. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pay a double amount in January in order to catch you up for the payment missed in August. So that's going to be 20 grand plus another 5%.
Yeah.
So, and then a third of that. But you've missed the third in August, so now you've got to catch up in January. So you basically got, let's say, $14,000 that you have to pay in January. And remember, in May, then you've got to pay another 7. So all of a sudden, you've got 14 in January, 20 in April, and 7 in May. And you go, bang, this is not worth it. This is risky. You go to lunch with a PAYE earner or maybe your family who want to protect you. And they're like, man, it's like, you should never have done this. Like, you just go back to work.
Yeah.
So that catches a lot of people out and can be very scary.
I think the best way to, because like that's too complicated for my little brain, man. So like the best way, I think even you, when I first met you to tell you what I was doing, you were like, just get a second account, man, and just park 30%.
Yeah.
And then we'll make sure that we...
You'll always have enough.
Just make sure you've always got enough there, and then if you park that 30, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, so what I taught Mikey was basically, if you have 10 grand of income, start a separate tax account, because he's using a company, he's not using Henry. Henry aren't doing it for him. I say, if you have 10 grand of income, you need to put 3 grand aside into that, and I'll do calculations for you throughout the year of how tax works. You just go out there and earn the income.
Yeah.
Then as Mikey progressed, he would run the calc and go, oh, I think this is loosely what my profitability is going to be. Therefore, my tax is going to be this. I've got too much set aside, or I've got too little set aside.
Can pay the man.
Yeah. So he's figured it out. It's not hard, but it's just tricky in those early years.
Yeah, and the problem...
Because it's new.
Yeah, the problem is in those early years is you kind of need as much mental capacity as you can to go out and make the money and do the job and do that stuff. And if that other stuff, if you're overthinking it and absorbing you, I think it takes up too much space, eh? So I just needed to be told, like, just do this, man, and you'll be sweet. And I personally, I like to be conservative in that area.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, like, if you go back to that situation, so if in October you found out that you've got 20 grand of terminal tax to pay, so on the profit on the last financial year, plus you've got to start paying it provisionally, then you've basically got 40 grand, let's say, of tax to pay, and it's October. So you've got November, December, January, February, March, April, May, and you've had to have, like, given the IRD $40,000.
Yeah.
Is that 7 months? Like, have you saved 40 grand in 7 months before?
Yeah.
Like, probably not.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's where it can become really stressful. So from day one, you just want, when you're profitable and when you're making good money, you just want to carve off a percentage and be like, that's not mine. I know that the grim IRD Reaper is coming for me. And it's going to murder this account at some stage. And it's going to suck. Even 10 years into business, when you get the email from the account and they say you've got to pay $60,000 worth of tax. And it's like, oh, I have to hit submit in internet banking and deploy it to pay this tax.
It sucks.
Yeah.
I've actually got here, because one of the questions you asked me was, what are the surprises that came up? And it's like, the expenses and tax shocked me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've got a good thing on
come
this that I
into
reckon
that.
you'll agree with. But on that too, what people do is they, Barry down the road at the bar tells them, oh, mate, you go and buy a vehicle, mate, in March, and that saves you paying all the tax. And so they're like, great. So what happens with that person is they go, well, I actually have a bit of money sitting here, and they go buy a $30,000 vehicle, and that's going to write your tax off, mate. I heard it. I saw it on a forum online. And then the accountant comes along and goes, oh, no, you can't claim an asset as an expense. It doesn't decrease your profitability. It just means that the depreciation on that vehicle, if it's even claimable, or that digger, let's say, or that new mower, the depreciation which reflects the decreasing value of that asset, that's an expense.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden now you've got this asset, you've got no cash, you've got a tax bill, and you're like, oh, God.
Yeah.
But Barry's not like, he's still telling you, nah, that's not how it works, mate. Your accountant's a dickhead. You should talk to my one. Oh, who do you use? Nah, Mrs. does it for me. Oh, awesome. Awesome. So now you ring the IRD and you tell the IRD that Barry's doing his accounts wrong. No, don't do that. But the other thing I think is the misconception, people hear people talking about that, oh, you can claim all your expenses when you're in business. I think they think what that means is that if you have $100 worth of meetings with coffees and cakes and stuff with prospective employees, the IRD come and give you $100 back. Not what happens.
No.
So Mikey makes $1,000 doing mortgages, or Luke does doing accounting, and then I go out and have meetings with people and then get them a pen or a gold pen or whatever, and that costs me $200. The IRD don't give me $200 back.
No.
The IRD say, okay, well, you had $1,000 worth of income, you had $200 worth of tax deductible expenses, your profit is $800, you need to pay tax on the $800.
Yeah.
But good old Mikey, remember, he was taught by Luke, I'll put 30% of that $1,000 aside. So now he's basically taxed himself at 30% into a separate account, but his tax is based on the $800, so tax on that will be lower than tax on $1,000, but you are taxed on your profit, so therefore he will have enough tax money set aside.
A little bit left over too.
Yeah. And then I'll let him go and do something naughty with that. He might be able to go on holiday once in 5 years or something. Yeah. So claiming expenses just means that it's offsetting your income. It doesn't mean you get the money back.
Yeah.
You make 40 grand in the first year. What do you do? I don't really know what that means, because that could mean
Work out how to make 80 the next year.
Oh, nice answer.
Yeah.
I think that could mean like you've got 40 grand left over, but that question should sort of be answered based off of what we're saying here anyway. However, the piece that I'll just add is, as always, what are your goals? So then you might go, well, I want a second mower. I want a cash runway or a buffer to be able to hire someone, for instance, which was actually one of the next questions. So cash is just built up to then deploy into something to map back to your goals. You might go, well, actually, my goals are to clear my household mortgage. Okay, great. Well, then have you cleared all your taxes and got enough set aside for that? Yes. Okay, take the leftover, pay off your mortgage. Done.
Yep.
Go again.
Yep.
Simple. It's not overcomplicated, but everybody thinks that there's all this other magic shit around it. It's not really like that. You use money for what it is that you want to achieve. A business is a vehicle to help you generate income or profit to have the life that you want and achieve the goals that you want. Your goals could be that you want to do 20 hours work a week, and you can make just as much as you were in a full-time role because you're working for high net worth people, or you're doing it faster, or you've got a little niche or whatever. Sweet. Like that, the business helps you achieve that. It's not like you have to be a multi-millionaire, you have to have all these goals and stuff. That could be your goal. So mold business based around what it is that you want to do, and think about that from the start. You want to hire a person in year 2. How do you calculate that decision?
Oh man.
You've done this?
I've done this.
Yeah.
Man, I had a horrendous fear around this, eh?
Everybody does, just
Yeah.
for
So
insight.
because I look at high level numbers when I make decisions, and at the time I didn't have like accurate forecasts with any of my growth rate built in. I just looked at back then the person I needed at full time was $60,000 per year. And I had just finished my first full financial year, and I took home 126, well, before tax. So that was my net profit. So in my brain, I was going back to $66,000 because half of that was going to get cut out.
Yeah.
And this was so terrifying to me, to the point where I did the interviews, I gave someone the job, and they were starting next month, and I rang them up and I said, can you start part-time? I had sleepless nights, man, for like 2 weeks, and I was like, I've got to call this person and say, look, I'm sorry, I can only afford half-time. This is not the way you do it. I just look back and I'm so embarrassed about this.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's just so bad.
But it's
Imagine
emotion
giving
over
someone
logic.
a full-time job and then calling them up being like, actually, can you start part-time?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Because I'm
that is-
scared I don't know if I'm going to make any more
Yeah.
money. Yeah.
And shout out to Mel, she's still with me, and she basically said yes. And then after like a month, I was like, okay, no, this needs to be full time because we just like took off.
Yeah, nice.
And I had to change it around and get everything going. And she earns a lot more than 60 now too, which is good. So, but this was, I don't know what the perfect way to do this. And the way that I did it is definitely not the perfect way to do it. It is probably the worst way to do it. And you probably can't get away with it doing that now. People would just tell you to like jam it. If you gave someone a full-time job, then ask them 2 weeks later to start part-time.
Yeah.
But I did it. And that was basically because the result of staying in the same position without the person was worse, even the way I handled it. Like I couldn't continue to operate or grow and achieve the things that I wanted without having someone else help.
Yeah.
So don't do it that way.
But you raise a good point, because I've written down here, know why you're hiring or your goals first. So you knew that you wanted to be bigger and you knew it couldn't just be you. So you knew you had to get the support of other people and get some of your time back to remove you from the things you shouldn't be doing. And that was going to require what you thought was a part-time person, but your gut knew straight away it's a full-time person, but it was the emotion, not logic, being scared, right?
Yeah.
And then they start and you're like, okay, this is fine. Let's roll.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
back
then I
to
went
logic.
from that year, I did 126,000 net profit, and the following, even after fucking it all up at the start, I went to 283.
Man, even with the person?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the fear of me going from 126,
That's
spending
a
60 grand
double, over double.
over double, yeah. Spending half of it on wages and going down to 66K. Massive myth like built up in my head. Like,
Yeah.
And I kind of knew that the whole point of it is to grow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's wild to think about how I handle that. It's so embarrassing.
One thing that I get people to do when I work with them on this is we map out their income coming in, their expenses going out in the coming months, and then we add in the cost of an employee, and then we have a look at whether they'll run out of money. Now that's, in an accountant's world, the right way to do it.
Yeah.
And normally they're like, oh, this is actually sweet. And I'm like, yeah, this is without even, so for you, for instance, that is actually, if we went through and said, okay, do you think you'll do the same level of income? No, it'll grow. Oh, let's just keep it the same. Oh, okay, that's kind of stupid. Well, let's just keep it the same. And then, okay, expenses, are they going to change? Now let's just put Mel's salary in there. Hey, bro, you don't run out of money. Is this a good idea? Oh, yeah. But yeah, your money's going backwards, but it's not what ended up happening. But
No.
it's like
But you're saying you're not going to go bankrupt.
Yeah. So you're like, what you're thinking in your head is like, what if I run out of money and can't pay them or
Yeah,
whatever?
yeah.
So you've got to ask yourself what it is that you're scared of to stop you from hiring that person. Does it fit into your goals? But also one thing I get clients to do is I go, why don't you go on your own social media and say, hey, I'm looking for XYZ sort of role for my business. Does anybody know anyone that could be perfect? Because then you've got a bit of a natural filter.
Oh, remember the 5th of November.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming up, 5 weeks time, baby.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah.
So you've
Time
got...
to blow up the government.
Is that what happened back in the day? Wasn't that what...
That's the story of Guy Fawkes. He
yeah.
tried to blow up the House of Lords of Parliament in the UK.
Wow.
Wish he succeeded. No, just joking.
So then I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah,
but
sorry about that.
Yeah. I was saying, then you know if you're going to run out of money. But anyway, you want to be ensuring that you are profitable as well, just before going like, oh, let's just hire someone because I think that's what you do in year 2. No, you need to make sure, like Mikey knew that he was profitable, that he was making more money, and that it was his next step, that he could then keep growing the business. Some people think, oh, I'm just going to hire someone, but they're not actually making that much money. I'm like, oh, this business isn't profitable enough for you to hire someone. You're really busy doing heaps of shit that you don't need to be doing.
Yeah.
And you're not charging enough to allow you to actually hire someone. Because if you do, you're not going to be able to pay yourself. So
Yeah.
do you want to start a business to pay someone else to not get any reward? It's kind of not the point.
No.
How do you pay your bills, your mortgage, etc.?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a little bit of saving comes into that too, right? Like I think I was probably a little bit weak at that time in terms of like I'd made $126,000 and I'd paid my tax on it or whatever, but I'd kind of also spent a little bit of that money.
Yeah.
So like I needed the income to be there to be able to cover the cost. I didn't have like a little plan B if the income didn't arrive. So that was probably what drove a bit of the fear in it. So, but that comes down to personal preference. Like I know some guys that are just like, don't even look and they're just like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
So it depends how like conservative versus like risk you are.
But I see businesses like that too, where they go, no, we just do this off gut. But I also see ones that have been really profitable and they start losing money. And it's like, these people, you're not as busy as you were. Why do you need more people? So often people who make gut decisions that are unfounded eventually get unwound by the fact their gut can't tell them that they should have let them go as well. So you got to be careful with that. You want a blend of both. And good, successful businesses are normally running numbers and figuring out, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mikey's right. Sometimes you do have a really highly profitable business, or even you might be one business where you've taken on heaps of funding, for instance, and you go, well, we have to blow through this cash. Then you just hire people and hopefully we get some more in the future.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different.
Most of us aren't going to have that problem.
No. The last bit was what costs surprised you when you started and what to watch out for.
Oh my God.
I put everything.
Yeah.
Everything that you think will cost you XYZ times it by 1.5 minimum. So when Mikey hired his first person when it was 60, even for 60, it's probably 90.
Yeah.
Because they want a desk, they want weeks off, they want,
holiday pay.
Yeah. There's just expenses.
Sick pay, bereavement leave, like the KiwiSaver.
Yeah.
It just goes and goes and goes.
Yeah, can I get a phone now? Can you give me a phone? Oh, hey, I'm going to get a coffee with that client. Can I? I'm not paying for it. Oh, yeah, shit. Okay. Hey, professional development. Oh, hey, you've got this license thing. Oh, hey, there's this course.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 1.5
we work in
easy.
finance. We need to insure you.
Oh, boom, more cost.
Yeah.
So I wrote down everything is 1.5 times more. Advertising, subscriptions, insurance, taxes, team members, office. Take all of it, whatever it is that you're going to bolt onto your business, and it's 1.5 times more than what you think it is. I guess the best way to explain this, bro, and this is a really good age that we live in now where you can actually work from home. But when you get an office, it's not the lease that's going to cost. It's, now we need a fridge. Oh, now we need the internet in here.
Yeah.
Oh, now we need power. Oh, there's OPEX. Oh, there's car parking.
Yeah.
Oh, now we need groceries for it
It's
as well.
insane, man.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, a lease isn't just, it's not like, oh, okay, we've got a lease that's going to be 40 grand for the year. No. Like probably double a lease is what you're going to pay. Oh, now we need some desks. Oh, Sally's having a bit of an issue with her back. She wants a stand-up desk.
Yeah.
Sally's not paying for that. Hey, I found this one online. It's only $3,000.
Yeah.
You're a rich business owner. Could you please put it in the... Great. How's that get delivered? Oh, I've got to pay for the delivery fee. Who's going to set it up? I'm not setting... Sally, I've got a bad back. I'm not setting my desk up.
Yeah.
You'll need to set that up. Do it on your weekend. On your weekend.
It's true, man.
Yeah.
Like still, we just opened another portion of our office recently. And I have like a reasonably sized company with a lot of people now. And I drove from here to Orewa, hired a trailer, unbolted a whole lot of desks from an office that I got, put them in the trailer, brought them back down to Takapuna, all on a Sunday, put them back into the office in Takapuna, bolted them all together, set them up.
Did anyone on the Monday ask how your weekend was? No.
No one cares.
No one
but like
cares.
that's the CEO of the company doing that.
Yeah.
And you have to. You don't have an option.
Well, I can't back a trailer, so I've got to ask Mikey to do
Well,
it.
I guess the other option is
I've got
pay
to pay.
someone $10,000. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I'm
Yeah.
snookered. I've got to pay. Like we paid to move from level 2 to level 4.
Yeah.
But guess what happened? Movers broke the big screen. Those big screens we've got in our
Yeah.
office. Bang, gone. Another $3,000. Awesome. All of a sudden, moving bill went from $1,500 to $4,500.
Yeah. I remember maybe like it was like 2020 or something, and I'm a few years in, and that was, I think I said to someone, I was like, man, the two biggest things I learned is that nobody got rich without paying a shit ton of tax.
Yeah.
Because you hear these stories about like, they do offshore shell companies.
Oh
and
yeah,
like
yeah.
this.
I want to go.
They put it all through their trusts and like all of this shit. Like, first of all, that's all like load of shit. You pay a shit ton of tax. And then the second one is you have to make way more money than you think. Because making the money versus what you actually get to spend on, living are two different things. Like the top line number versus what comes out the bottom requires careful management. Growth is expensive.
Yeah.
And you really have to, you think you want to make $100,000 when you go into business or whatever the number is, but really that needs to be like, in terms of money coming in, needs to be like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
If you want the 100, once you do everything, and then, you get 70 net.
Yeah.
It's a big difference, eh?
Massive
and
difference.
you've got to be able to manage that. And that was the shock for me.
Yeah.
It's like, man, everything is costing a lot. The only answer is to make more money. And then it's like, oh, yep, tax. It's like, wow, this is horrific.
Yeah.
It feels like that. And eventually you get used to it. And well,
If you put your money aside well, then you kind of, like you put your tax aside well from the start, then you've got your ACC covered, your taxes and whatnot. Then when you've got to let go of it, at least it's coming out of a compartmentalized bank account, and then you're just looking at your operational.
yeah.
But it is true. Like as soon as someone's like, "Oh, I need you to meet me tomorrow," and you go, "Oh, great, okay," jump online. Oh, fucking $600 to fly to Wellington.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Nah.
They don't go, "Oh, sorry, man. You know, I can't do this opportunity because it's $600. Have you seen flights?" I'd be like, "Okay, sweet. We'll find someone else to do it."
Yeah.
And then you missed your $60,000 opportunity, but you
Yeah.
need that $600 in that moment.
100%.
So you gotta stay a bit more liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on some non-financial stuff, just to wrap up, I've written here. Well, I said with all of this cash stuff, like you will only figure this stuff out as you go as well. You will only get the lessons. You know, like when I started doing a podcast, for instance, I didn't envision there was going to be $100,000 worth of costs a year to run it. You know, but then as you get going, you're like, yeah, I can see this coming.
Yeah,
and then you're
yeah.
like, okay, I need to try and break the back of this. How am I going to do it? Where's this funny? And you start to figure it out. And I was even telling my mum recently when she was staying around the different expenses and bills and things for the different ventures I have, and she's just like, how do you like where does all the money come from? I'm like, that's my role, mum. Like I have to figure it out.
Yeah.
She's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, they're asking for a lot of money. I'm like, yeah. But I'm like, so I can't think like an employee. I
Yeah.
can't think like I would have used to. I just have to figure it out. Otherwise, the
You
shit
do have
doesn't
to
come
figure it
through.
out. Like we're running out of room in our current office, and we're looking around. And do you think I can find anything for under 200 grand a year?
That even scares me. I'm like, 200 grand to a landlord.
Yeah. And then that's what they advertise them as.
Plus OPEX,
Yeah.
CapEx.
And when you're in a building of that size,
Yeah.
and it's 200 grand, the OPEX is 50, 60 grand.
Then week 2, oh, hey, Mikey, our car got broken into on the weekend and we've lost our security tags. Can you get those? Yeah, no, we'll sort that for you. That's a waste of your time. That's your admin. Hey, guys, we need to sort out admin says, oh, yeah, check the lease. They're $150 each. How many do you need? Oh, okay, sweet. Ring your employee back. Oh, hey, just a heads up, they're $150 that's got to come out of your pay. No, that phone call doesn't come.
Nah.
Oh, my fucking employer made me pay $150 for my lost security tag. So, it's true though, eh?
It is. Yeah,
There's so much. Oh, hey, Mikey, I'm actually lactose vegan intolerant. Can you please get the, dairy-free whatever?
Oh.
This is not very inclusive in this office if you don't have that milk. Oh, yeah, no worries. Just add it on to the, yeah. So you have to start solving way bigger problems.
Yeah. And you
If you start taking people on, people bring problems with them and their problems become your problems.
Yeah. Part of the job is a little bit of counselling and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Which is all good. It's just part of the job. But yeah, it's still a surprise though, because you think you can just go and do something similar to what you're doing now, getting out there and going to repeat it a bit, but you end up in a completely different field with all sorts of additional things that you have to get good at.
Yeah, so I would say like now you've quit your job, get around some other business owners and get around some weapons.
I also think if you do that and you do well, fucking pat yourself on the back, eh?
Oh, yeah.
You deserve it.
Yeah.
Massively. Because if you actually crack it in this country and have whatever your belief is of success, fucking enjoy it, eh?
Yeah.
Because it is tough.
It is, yeah. And that's one thing I've got here is like keep yourself well.
Yeah.
Because this shit's hard, man.
Yeah.
It's a sport. And you're gonna get whacks from all different angles, and you're gonna get we need the non-vegan milk. And like, do you worry about that or do you just get it? But then how far does that go? You know, and there's just way more shit to think about than you will ever have thought possible. So you got to look after yourself both mentally and physically. And business actually has really high levels of suicide, anxiety, depression, all those sorts of things. And I can see why, because it can be a real lonely place and it can be a real hard place.
That is a good point. It's pretty lonely.
Yeah. So you've got to make sure you get around some weapons. And guess what? All your mates who are employees, they're like, oh, bro, awesome. You started that thing. Can you fuck up about it now?
Yeah.
Oh, you've got anxiety running a business, bro. I heard it was cruisy, man. I heard you do whatever you want, man. Can't you just go surfing when you want? Oh, I don't really want to hear about your anxiety, man. I'm joking a little bit. That shouldn't be hopefully how the conversations go. But people won't care about your shit, man.
Nah.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't tell people. So if you're struggling or you're feeling unwell or your business is tough, share that with someone, but don't share it with someone that doesn't want you to solve it.
Yeah.
Yes, you want to hear a bit of like, oh, that's really tough, and they're listening to you, but then you want to be around some people that are like, bro, I've been there, I get it, man. Go speak to this person, then that person. Here, let me deal with that bit for you. Oh, mate, I can solve that for you. And then you're like, oh, okay, it's not just me. It goes from feeling lonely, like it's just me, this is happening too, to, oh, this is just part of it, and I need to learn to navigate it. And I didn't learn to navigate it over there because I didn't have to.
No, it wasn't a thing over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it becomes a thing, it doesn't mean that any of this is bad. It just means you have to do it.
Yeah. I wrote down, now you've quit your job, think about who you have to become. And you're not an employee anymore. You're a business owner if you're going to go down that route. So this sounds rude, but you can't take your broke-ass property NZ scarcity mindset to this game. It doesn't work.
Nah.
And that's what I was explaining to mum. She's like, wow, who's paying for all this? Like, how are you going to do that? I'm like, well, I've figured out 60% of it. I've got 12 months to figure out the 40. Like, I'll figure it out. She's like, oh, holy shit. Like, how do you, I'm like, I don't know. I just figured it out. You have to.
Yeah.
But you can't take like a scarcity, oh, I don't want to spend any money. Oh, I don't want to have that insurance because, it's $300 or whatever. Because then bang, you do get an insurance, issue. And then you're like, oh, I'm not insured. And then game over. So you have to think bigger. And I think the kind of 9 to 5-y and, grow up, get a mortgage and stuff and just like pay it off as fast as you can and don't do anything for 30, 20 years. It doesn't really work in business because there's so much more cost and surprises that you will have to figure out. And normally they come back to, okay, how do I financially solve this?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, eh? Like, also they become, everything is bigger, right? Like you think about a mortgage payment on a $1 million mortgage. I don't even know what that is at the moment. Like $8,000 a month or $7,000 a month or something. It's like, well, try 40 or 50 grand a month. That's my expenses.
Yeah.
Like managing that.
Yeah.
So it's a completely different game to that.
Yes.
And the similarities sort of, you have to leave, like there aren't enough similarities. Like you have to leave that complete process and way of doing life at the door.
Yeah.
You can come back to it and go and do it, but I think they aren't the same and you can't treat them the same, eh?
No, I mean, like as much as we're going on about how big the expenses can get, it depends how big you want to play the game as well.
For sure.
And then it comes back to goals. So you want to, know from the start what is it that you're trying to build. Maybe you are just rolling the sole trader thing. That's fine. Like that's sweet.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the game's not going to be as scary and whatnot, but you'll still have costs because, when you take 4 weeks off because your partner's like, hey, I want to take a holiday, and you go, well, I don't get paid when I'm not working. They go, well, I don't care. Like, I'm using my leave.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And you go, well, shit, now my 12 months just became 11 months. What am I going to do for money through that period? That's on you, buddy.
Yeah.
Like, you chose that path. That's what people will say to you. They're
And
like,
there's
well,
a opportunity cost there as well. Like, man, there's so much to think about.
yeah. But it's fun. It is really fun if you enjoy it. But again, all of the stuff depends on goals and how big you want to
I
play.
reckon you have to go, if you do it, you have to go back to the hunting season pod, eh? Because it takes that 18 to 36 month period at the beginning to make sure that you break its back.
Yeah.
And like you can't, well, maybe you can. I don't think it's probably a good idea to get it, leave your job, start something, get into a business, then after month 4, be like, oh, I'm off to Europe for 2 months.
Yeah.
I just don't think it flies.
Nah.
And if you do that and then wonder why something didn't work or you didn't grow fast enough, if you did survive, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it requires a bit of discipline for sure.
But remember, school probably took you 5 years, uni 3 if you did that. Like a trade still takes years to do. Business is a whole new vehicle, a whole new venture. Expect it to take time. 3 years for an economics degree, 3 years for a business degree. You're not just going to go out there and blitz business.
Yeah.
And some people just to be fair, I do see some people that just crush it year 1.
Yeah.
But they don't learn about tax and stuff. And so then they're like, hey, bro, I've heard there's this thing about, taxes after year 1. Like, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
And they go, oh, I've been putting money aside. I'm like, oh, wicked. Like,
Yeah.
you've educated yourself in advance. But then I'll see people who are like, well, I've got no work coming up. What do I do? Sometimes I'm like, go speak to that person. They might be able to help you. Here's what you need to do. They'll go do it. They'll solve the problem. They'll keep rolling. But it's always, happening in front of you. And it's, a sport where you've got to then figure out, okay, what's the action that you take in that moment, because there will always be a surprise out of left field.
Yeah. Yeah, man. But yeah, worth every minute, eh?
Yeah. If you love it, you love it. Like it's a cool thing. And you're hiring people, you're helping them get closer to their goals, and they're helping you get closer to your goals. They're helping your organization be the thing that you want it to be. If you're hiring, but even if you're sole trading, you're helping people, mow their lawns or whatever. You're providing a service, you're serving people. It's a phenomenal thing to do in your life, rather than be sitting and waiting. I came out of the gym the other day, man, and I walked past Wins, and there was a dude sitting there waiting for Wins to open. And no shade on anybody that uses or goes to Wins. There's 3 pieces of rubbish around, and my brain was like, you need to pick those up, to me. And I was thinking, that's a little bit of the difference in life, man. I'll pick those up, I'll put them in the bin. Don't wait for shit to happen for you or to you. You got to get in control of it. And that's what business allows you to do, because now you're in the ultimate sport. I don't have any clients. Go tell that to another business owner. They'll be like, oh man, that sucks, bro. What are you going to do? No, they're like, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
You have to do it.
Yeah.
They pick up so it forces you to take action.
That's so true, man.
And then it stops you from being the person that sits there and just goes like, oh, someone will come and as soon as that door opens, my life will get better, or I'll be able to get my thing or whatever. And like I say, no shade on that person, but you start seeing the world differently, and it forces you to. And then you see that and you have that moment. I'm like, oh, I wonder why that guy's not like, you know what, whilst I'm waiting here, I might make myself useful, and I might pick up these bits of rubbish that are out the front of this organization that I need to be a part of and get something from. It's just like, no. I think that's just something that I think you start, the world shows up different, you show up different to the world, and you start trying to solve problems differently.
Yeah.
And you're forced to, because you know that as soon as you stop doing it, your business starts decaying.
Yeah. I mean, okay, before we finish quickly, there's one other thing. I think you have to carry a bit of a belief of an end result. Yeah. Because it is, like, I got told all sorts of things, like what you were saying, like, it might be a family member or whatever being like, oh, that's risky, or you're too young.
Don't you know how many businesses fail?
Yeah, like all of this stuff. And, you have to be so careful, because that stuff is way louder than the little noise in your head that's going like, don't know where this is going, but I've got to keep pushing.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's a hard battle to have with all of those things over there versus you just telling yourself. So you have to be so strong in the mind.
Especially when you're telling yourself, it'll work out. Like, I just need to stick at it, and nothing's happening. No one's responding.
No pay for 3 months.
Yeah. you do. You're like, oh, am I? You start doubting yourself. But what you do in those moments is you ring somebody who's doing what you're doing. Because let's be real, most people are doing a similar business to somebody else, and you find somebody and you ring them and say, hey, this is a stage I'm at. I know you've broken. Well, it looks like you've broken the back of it. Would I be right? If I am, could I just pick your brains for a little bit? Like, how did you get through this period? Or what would you do differently looking back? And people love to share their story and help you, so that you don't have to go through the struggle that they went through. But you have to be strong enough to pick up the phone and be like, hey.
I even have fake conversations.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm like, oh, if I call this person, what would they say?
Yeah, nice.
And then you kind of mostly answer it yourself.
Like, okay, carry on.
Yeah, back to it. Boom.
Yeah, I think belief is really important, and belief is sort of not something that we teach well, I don't think, in New Zealand. It's sort of, we don't really get into that. We let the sports players and stuff and the really successful people, it's all good for them to have belief, but individually, if you go around telling people, what you believe and that you're going to be successful, I'm going to crush this and whatnot, it's like, oh. But there's also unrealistic belief. Like, sometimes I'll talk to people and they might be starting a business that, might be a $2 million, say, business if they crush it. And they're talking about, when I'm at 100 million turnover, like, that's all good and well, but let's get the basics right here first, bro. And also, what's the data to suggest there's a $100 million business in this industry? Because from what I've seen, there sort of isn't one. So are your beliefs, a little bit misdirected to what the reality is? Or maybe you're going to be the outlier and you're going to do it. But you have to be really strong with your belief, I agree.
Yeah.
Righto, now you've quit your job. Now you know exactly what you have to do.